Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books and marketing expert covering woke NFL panics as anti-diversity lawsuits target DEI. Let's get into the story. Before we do, please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate you guys. Coming from courts, anti-diversity lawsuits are coming for the Rooney Rule. Stephen Miller's America First Legal doesn't want NFL teams to interview minority coaches. From the Washington Post, DEI's Rooney Rule placed under legal microscope on and off the field. Stephen Miller's America First Legal files an EEOC complaint against the NFL, adding to the wave of challenges against the hiring practice widely used in corporate America. And from America First Legal themselves, America First Legal blasts the NFL's illegal and racist Rooney Rule, files federal civil rights complaint. From courts, anti-diversity lawsuits are coming for the Rooney Rule. Ahead of football's most anticipated event this weekend, the NFL is under fire from a conservative legal nonprofit for its diversity hiring rule. This week, America First Legal, led by former Donald Trump advisor Stephen Miller, filed a federal civil rights complaint against the National Football League, arguing its Rooney Rule violates Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which it absolutely does violate that. And here's how. The Rooney Rule, which was adopted by the NFL in 2003, requires the league's teams to interview at least 2 minority candidates when filling head coaching, general manager, and coordinator positions. Between 2012 and 2023, white coaches made up 81% of head coach hires, according to the NFL's 2023 Diversity and Inclusion Report. Yes, there is such a thing. The Rooney Rule has since been adopted in a wide range of industries, with hundreds of Fortune 500 companies using a similar framework in their hiring practices. Quote, "It is abundantly clear that the NFL and its member teams do indeed limit, segregate, or classify their employees or applicants for employment in ways that deprive at least some individuals of interview and employment opportunities specifically because of race, color, or sex," the AFL said in its complaint to the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. Ian Pryor, an AFL senior advisor, called the Rooney Rule insulting and condescending to prospective coaches who are merely interviewed to check a box in a statement. He added that if the NFL truly wants to end discrimination in the employment process, it should follow the meritocratic system it displays on the field and eliminate the Rooney Rule. An NFL spokesperson told the Washington Post it looks forward to responding to this complaint and demonstrating that our policies and programs are fully consistent with the law and with fundamental notions of fairness. The spokesperson added that the league is proud of the work that we have done to promote equal employment opportunities for women and people of color and the resulting growth and diversity throughout the NFL. America First Legal is continuing its diversity lawsuits. The NFL is just the latest target of Miller's legal group. In August, the AFL filed an EEOC complaint against cereal company Kellogg's over its hiring practices, which it argued were unlawful due to seeking balance in its workforce based on race, color, national origin, and sex. The group said its equity hiring efforts were, quote, "a euphemism for illegal discrimination." The group has also sued a range of companies for similar practices, including Target, Starbucks, Alaska Air, Nordstrom, Hershey, Unilever, Mars, BlackRock, Anheuser-Busch InBev, Amazon, and more. The AFL, which Miller co-founded in 2021 with fellow former Trump staffer Mark Meadows to combat the racial activist left, argues the diversity efforts at these companies harm their missions and shareholders. The group has also targeted U.S. government agencies, including the Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights, and has addressed law and medical schools about admissions and hiring efforts. Despite the backlash from the conservative group over its diversity hiring efforts, a Washington Post investigation found that under the Rooney Rule, black coaches are still denied top jobs in the NFL. So the racism of the Rooney Rule isn't even working. From the Washington Post, DEI's Rooney Rule placed under legal microscope on and off the field. Stephen Miller's America First Legal files an EEOC complaint against the NFL, adding to the wave of challenges against the hiring practice widely used in corporate America. With 9 minority head coaches lined up to lead NFL teams in 2024, the Rooney Rule is having one of its best years ever. The question now is whether the hiring practice and its progeny in corporate America will stay in the game much longer amid a wave of legal challenges to workplace diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. On Tuesday, a conservative legal nonprofit filed a federal civil rights complaint against the NFL, alleging that rule is illegal. The rule is absolutely illegal, and the AFL people have had really good success so far. We'll see how this complaint goes. Hundreds of companies have adopted some form of the Rooney Rule since 2003, when the league began compelling teams to interview minority candidates for any head coaching position. Many Fortune 500 companies go further, with some requiring as many as 3/4 of job contenders coming from underrepresented groups, as they call them, or offering incentives to select them. Now, some legal scholars and conservative activists say the hiring practice referred to in the private sector as diverse candidate slates, especially since the Supreme Court upended race-conscious college admissions in June, sparking a wave of legal challenges against corporate diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. Kenji Yoshino, a New York University law professor and director of the Meltzer Center for Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging, consults with Fortune 500 companies on the legal risks facing DEI programs. The center rates programs green, yellow, and red, depending on their level of risk, with the last being the most risky. Quote, "The Rooney Rule is squarely in the yellow zone," Yoshino said in an interview. That's because the practice typically allows hiring managers to consider race and gender when populating candidate pools, which could be perceived as a form of discrimination because, of course, it is a form of discrimination. It's really only a question of intentions, if you have good intentions or bad intentions. But even if you have good intentions, it's actually still illegal. On the other hand, candidates are not ultimately chosen based on those characteristics, so there's a firewall between sourcing and the final decisions, he said. He goes on to claim the practice has been deemed legal by several lower court cases in the 1990s. This is not the 1990s anymore, yet over the past year, signs have emerged that it may again be tested in court. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission complaint filed Tuesday contends the Rooney Rule violates Title VII of the 1964 Civil Rights Act and that the agency should investigate. Quote, "It is abundantly clear that the NFL and its member teams do indeed limit, segregate, or classify their employees or applicants for employment in ways that deprive at least some individuals of interview and employment opportunities, specifically because of race, color, or sex," the letter says. Similar allegations have been leveled against programs in corporate America. In January, America First Legal accused pharmaceutical giant Sanofi Pasteur of discrimination because its diverse slate policy requires at least one person of color and one woman to be considered for an open position. In a pair of January 2nd letters addressed to the EEOC and the Office of Federal Contract Compliance Programs, the nonprofit accused the company of violating federal law and said it should be investigated. EEOC complaints can often be precursors to lawsuits. Quote, "These programs have had some real legal problems," Pryor said in an interview. Even nuanced policies on diverse slates, Pryor argued, can violate Title VII of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, which prohibits employment discrimination. America First Legal has also targeted diverse candidate slate policies at Mars and Activision Blizzard, which was recently acquired by Microsoft. Quote, "We're in a new era," Pryor said, referring to the Supreme Court's college admissions ruling. "And these are cases that are going to start working their way up the federal courts. A lot of cases are coming up in 2024. In a January 11th letter sent to 10 recruiting firms, Senator Tom Cotton took a similar position. He wrote that he'd received troubling reports that recruiting firms are conspiring with companies to exclude non-diverse candidates from the hiring pool. Quote, "Race-based hiring policies are being challenged in court, and you can be assured that corporate DEI initiatives that discriminate based on race will soon suffer the same fate as affirmative action in academia," Cotton wrote. The legal scrutiny comes as diverse slate practices have exploded in corporate America. A survey of 489 companies by DEI consulting firm Diversity MBA Media showed that 85% of respondents had selected job candidates using some form of a diverse slate policy in 2022. And that's up from 64% in 2012. Survey respondents spanned 38 industries, including technology, retail, and finance, and averaged $27 billion in annual revenue. Quote, "In the last 2 decades, it's really become more formalized," said Pam McElvain, the chief executive of Diversity MBA Media, in an interview. "Now organizations are creating practices, required practices, around diverse slates." Even with the wide adoption of diverse hiring slates, few people of color helm the largest U.S. companies. In 2023, 8 black CEOs led Fortune 500 companies, and that's a record high. But McElvain's data, which she collects to track companies' progress on DEI efforts, show that diverse slates work best when coupled with what McElvain described as a, quote, accountability measure, which can be an incentive or penalty tied to a manager's success in meeting the company's diversity goals. So you need to pay people off or punish them for pushing diverse candidates. If they don't push enough diverse candidates, you need to punish the managers, even though the managers have actual responsibility and actual accountability for results for the organization, which the organization is owned by the shareholders, but multiple companies, multiple customers, multiple employees actually depend on the organization to not be screwing around with distractions like trying to be racist when hiring people. Yet they keep pushing these policies. Fortunately, now there are more and more lawsuits to prevent it. For example, 36% of the surveyed companies provided some kind of incentive, including bonuses, for meeting diversity goals. On the whole, those companies saw the highest rates of women and people of color promoted to senior leadership. 49% of the companies surveyed made hiring decisions based on diverse slates, only sometimes using an incentive. While those companies still saw people of color moving into senior leadership, fewer women rose to those roles. Without some sort of incentive, McElvain said, diverse hiring slates can be hit or miss, and if you've been achieving your goals, you've been lucky. The NFL's use of the Rooney Rule has produced more misses than hits in diversifying the NFL's head coaching ranks, a 2022 Washington Post investigation found. The number of black head coaches leading the 32 NFL teams has never hit double digits. In 2024, there will be 9 minority head coaches, including 6 black coaches. Jonathan Bean, an NFL senior vice president and the league's chief diversity and inclusion officer, said he was pleased by the numbers, but he cautioned that it was one cycle and one place in time, and that the league was looking for sustainable improvement. The NFL has enhanced the rule in recent years. When it was first established in 2003, it required that only one minority coach be interviewed for any open head coaching position. Now it requires 2. The rule also has been extended to general manager and offensive coordinator positions. In 2020, following corporate America's lead, the NFL began offering incentives. If a team loses a minority executive or coach to another team, that team receives a third-round compensatory pick for 2 years. If a team loses both a coach and personnel member, it receives a third-round compensatory pick for 3 years. But incentives, particularly financial incentives tied to diverse hiring, could be legally risky, said Yoshino, the NYU professor. Quote, I would say that is in the red zone, Yoshino said, adding in a recent Harvard Business Review article that the practice could place preferences on members of protected groups, such as particular races or genders, which could expose a company to legal action. Of course it's illegal. McElvain said that incentives don't always come in the form of money or benefits. Rather, they often come in form of recognition, which can include a positive performance review or an award. She also argued that diverse slates have so far been legally safe. Quote, when you look at a lot of the employment law, most of it is direct discrimination and has nothing to do with diverse slates, or you'd see a lot more of it, she said. Quote, it just so happens the slate is equalized so that a woman or a person of color has a chance of being hired. Following the calls for racial justice in the wake of the 2020 death of George Floyd, large companies came under intense pressure to bolster diversity in their upper ranks, including the use of the Rooney Rule. Among those companies were the 5 largest U.S. banks, J.P. Morgan Chase, Bank of America, Citibank, Wells Fargo, and U.S. Bancorp, the Wall Street Journal reported in 2021. All said they'd implement a diverse slate hiring practice or disclose the ones they had in place. Asked for comment, 3 of the banks, J.P. Morgan Chase, Citigroup, and Wells Fargo, confirmed they continue to use diverse hiring slates. J.P. Morgan also noted it's continually reviewing its DEI programs for legality. Quote, as the landscape around DEI evolves, we continue to review our programs and initiatives to confirm that we have clear, well-founded objectives and that our approach is appropriately tailored and measurable. How we support this may evolve, but our commitment to DEI remains steadfast. In a statement, Wells Fargo spokeswoman Lori Kite said the bank has, quote, recommitted to our diverse candidate slate guidelines with enhancements focusing on simplicity of process and improving the experience of all candidates, internal and external. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another video. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.